Hey guys, I'm just getting started like always a couple minutes early so that everyone has a chance to get here. So we're gonna get started in like a minute and a half or something like that. I always see so many familiar names. Ooh, hi Irene. Hey Luke. Bunch of people I know. This is great. Mm. Okay, I'm gonna give it another 30 seconds and then I'll get started. I just want to make sure that everybody has a chance to get here. I noticed right off the bat, someone asked in the Q&A, Richard, where can I find the earlier webinars that I missed? So if you actually send us an email to support@umapped.com, we'll send you a link that will direct you to where you can view all of the different recordings. I'll add this one's to it at the end of today's session. That way you have them all in one place. So just send us an email. One sec, I'll even type you the email to send it to. There. Okay, so I think I'm going to get started. There's a good deal of people here, and if anyone else trickles in later on, this is still being recorded. So like always, they're going to get a recording of it. So hi, everybody. Once again, my name is Sophie, and I'm part of the customer success team here at Umapped. We're so happy that you've registered and joined us for our summer school series, and we thank you for taking the time to join us for part 4 of this 5-part series, which is almost the last one. So you're almost done. So each week for the month of July, we'll build on what we've learned during the previous sessions, and at the end of the month, you'll walk away with the confidence that you're leveraging all of UMAP's functionality to streamline your workflow and meet your business and customer needs, and content-rich profiles, templates, and trips so that you're ready to inspire your clients as they dream and plan for future travel. So during today's session, we'll be focusing on templates, including how to create templates and the difference between creating templates versus creating trips, how to manage templates as a company administrator, and lastly, how to convert templates into trips and vice versa and all that good stuff. As always, we'll leave some time for a Q&A at the end of today's session, but you can feel free to leave your questions as we go because my colleague Mary is here to answer any questions that you want to pose during the webinar. That way, I don't have to stop and break the flow, but you still get your answers in a timely manner. So just a couple more housekeeping items before we get started. So like always, after each session, we'll be sending out a follow-up email that will include a recording of the session, some important links to training and instructions, as well as the next steps that you can take to prepare for the final part of this series, which is this Thursday, actually. Additionally, if by any chance you're still new to Umapped and you haven't registered for a free trial, I want to make sure that you have access to a complimentary trial. So from our website, which is umapped.com, click on sign up in the top right corner and complete the trial form. Once your trial account has been set up, a member of our customer success team, likely myself, will send you a confirmation email with your account credentials and login instructions. So with that, let's get started. So the first thing I really want to tackle today is what even are templates to begin with. So if you've been using the Trip Publisher for more than a year, you may remember using templates in the older Trip Publisher interface. We have since redesigned templates, the templates functionality to make it easier to save and create travel information that can be reused time and time again and that your customers will love. So what exactly are templates? Templates are day-by-day itineraries, much like trips, but without specific dates. You can see right here. Instead, set a template duration and include all of the elements that you'd want in a great trip. Templates can be reused over and over, again, to create itineraries for your clients. So think of templates kind of like a model of a trip, which can include all of the base elements that you'd want in a great trip, with room later on to add your specific bookings or other booking details like flights or insurance information. So when creating templates, you can add destination content from one of our integrated sources, such as WCities or Afar. You can add your own content from your library, and this way templates can really be content rich. You can make your templates available to other advisors in your company and vice versa. You can see here all of the different company templates that I have. And you can convert existing trips into templates so that they can be easy to use again in the future. And then finally, you can also add tours from some integrated suppliers to create more creative and elaborate templates. So remember, if you find yourself creating the same or similar typed trips, using templates will save you time because you don't have to start from scratch every single time. This gives you the time to personalize your customers' trips or to sell even more. So I'm going to go into my sample trip to Aspen and just scroll through a little bit so you can kind of see some of the things that I have in this template that I've already built. You can see that this particular template is pretty activity heavy. So this is just one of the ways that you can use templates as kind of a base for your trips rather than creating a full-fledged trip with everything done top to bottom. So we're going to go back to templates and we're going to illustrate this more by actually creating a template while we're all together. So I'm going to start just like with a trip by clicking the Create Template button. So creating a template and a trip is almost the same in terms of the workflow. As you can see here, to begin with, I have to enter a name for my template, just like I would with a trip. So I'm going to call this one Sample Template to Colorado, and I'm going to make this 7 days. Again, just like with trips, you have the option to add tags to make this easy to search for later on. I don't have a lot of templates personally, so I'm just going to omit putting some tags, but if you have quite a lot, this might be an easy way for you to sort through them. And then to save that, I'm going to click Create Template right at the bottom. So the first key difference between templates and trips that you can see here is that I didn't set any specific dates or times. You can only set days and times of day when creating the template or segments. So as you can see, I had to choose duration at the point of creating my template rather than some specific dates. So again, just like with a trip, I'm going to start off by adding a cover photo. So I'm just going to put in Colorado in Unsplash. And this looks perfect right off the bat. I'm not even going to bother looking for more. All right. So now that I'm within the template, you can immediately see even more differences than before when I was creating it. For one, there's less options for importing bookings. You can see that there's no import bookings section in the left-hand side. It just goes straight from import trip to suppliers. And if I go to add a segment, so let's say I want to add an accommodation, you can see that it says check-in day and check-in time, and those two fields don't have specific dates or times of day, but rather they have the individual days throughout my 7-day template and 3 different times of day, or the ability to omit it altogether. So I'm just going to look up a Colorado hotel. So let's do the days in. I'm just going to pick the first one off the top of the list and add that to my template. The second thing that you can notice right off the bat is that there's significantly less fields for details here. There's no ability to add a room. There's no ability to add pricing or anything like that. And that's because this is really just the foundation of what a trip would be later on. It doesn't have specific traveler details because those are things you'd want to add later on when you're actually customizing and personalizing the trip. That's why I tend to recommend, if you're creating templates, to maybe not add flights, because those might fluctuate unless you use the exact same flight over and over again. All right, so just like with trips, I'm going to close this up now. The left menu allows you to add a variety of content, such as all of our integrated suppliers, so everything you would have added in a trip, all kinds of destination content. So if you've been creating anything in your library, you can add that from your library. You can also add some supporting documents, just like with trips. And these documents will be available every time you create a new trip from this template. So I'll just go ahead actually right now and add a couple files just to get some stuff in here. So let's add my voucher, attach, and let's also add from content from library my agency documents. Add document, just to get some stuff in here to really buff up what my template looks like. So if I go back to the main body of my template, on the right side of the screen, you can click the add icon to create your own booking segments and add notes. To spruce up this template and begin building the foundations for a future trip, I'll add a couple activity segments that I've already saved in my vendors, which we've gone over before in the Working Smart webinar on vendors. So I'm going to go to my activities, and I'm going to add in Aspen's Highlands. That's going to be 1. I'll put that maybe on day 2. Again, just a little trick for anybody that doesn't already know this, but just like with trips, if I just choose a start date and I keep the end date as none, and I keep the start and end time as the same time, when I add this to my template, it's only going to show the first day at the one time. So you don't necessarily need to put an end time to every single activity that you do. So I'm going to close that, and then I'm also going to add another activity, let's say Grotto's Trail. Perfect. And I'm going to add that on day 4, but for this one, I'm going to have it start in the afternoon. No, have it start in the morning and end in the afternoon, and add that to my template. So let me just update that. Into the afternoon, update. Voila, perfect. So now I can concentrate on actually building my template. I don't have to worry about any photos or addresses because I already added all of these when I created them in my vendors previously. You'll also note while I'm building my template that I can't actually add travelers to a template. In order to send this to a traveler, I would actually have to convert this into a trip. This is because templates are designed for internal use only, whereas trips are meant to be sent externally to travelers. So if this base template is what I'd like to present to a client before adding their specific information, like flights, you can always simply publish the template and convert it into a trip to send that proposal. So I'm just going to add a couple more things in here just to really flesh this out. I'll add a little note and just say, have a fantastic trip. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. Add to template. And didn't set an end date to this, so I'm just going to add the 7th, update that. And I think the last thing I want to add is a summary. Let's just add a summary just to get a lot of stuff in here. Okay, so let's say now that my template is complete. Obviously, I didn't really put that much in here, but I just wanted to show you how you can add some of your segments that you've already created as vendors, and the differences between the amount of details you could put in a template versus the amount of details you can put in a trip. So let's explore a little bit more about what it might look like to actually send this to a traveler, or what it looks like to actually publish this. So first of all, let's explore a little bit the difference in publishing it. Well, sorry, let's explore how publishing a template works by explaining the difference between unpublish versus publish. So if a trip is pending, which it is by default when you first create the template, so my sample template to Colorado is currently, if I go here, you can see it's in pending status, and you can always check this out just by going to your template dashboard and looking under status. So I'll go back into my trip. So if it's in pending, then it can be edited and changes can continue to be made to it. So I can add some stuff from the left side, I can add my supporting documents, I can manually add segments from the add icon, and I can edit any of the segments I've already added. The moment that the template is published, so I'm going to go ahead and publish my template, you can no longer make any changes. It's basically like a saved, solid template. So if you need to make changes to a published template, you can always unpublish that template by clicking the Unpublish button in the top right corner, the same button when you published it, and then you will be able to make changes again. So it's important to note whether your template is published or not, because there's a couple of rules that I want to get into. So I'm going to go back to my templates dashboard, and we're just going to look at some of the templates that I've already had, some that are pending, some that are published. So a template has to be published in order to import it into a trip or to be able to create a trip from that template. You'll see that if I do the same thing with the Beaver Creek ski trip, which is a pending trip, I don't have the ability to create a trip from this template. So it's always good to know which of your templates are published or not for that reason. If you need to make changes to a published template, then you're going to need to unpublish it, as I just mentioned. A template has to be published in order for it to be available under company templates for all of you company administrators. A template has to be pending in order to add a trip to that existing template. So you'll notice that if I go into one of my published templates, I don't have that option on the left side to import a trip into my template. And that's because it's been published, so it's essentially locked. But if I go into my pending sample template to Colorado, I do have the option to import a trip into this because it's still unlocked, it's still editable, I can still make changes to it. So if I wanted to import a new trip into one of my templates, I would first need to make sure that it's still pending and that it's unpublished. That being said, of course, there's no limit to how many times you can publish and unpublish a template. So you can continue to make edits and changes to this as you go. It's just good to be mindful as to the status of your template. Just in case you're in another screen and you're trying to import one of your templates into a trip, but you can't find it, and then you go check and you realize, oh, it's still pending. That's why I can't access it. That's happened to me in so many webinars. It's really embarrassing. All right. So now that you've created and published your template, the next logical step will be to convert that template into a trip that you can then send to your travelers. So there are a few different ways to convert a trip into a template, depending on your workflow. So we'll go over all of the different methods, as well as the different scenarios that might exhort you to choose one method over another. So first of all, we're going to go into my template dashboard where I am right now. And you can see that the first option, and I briefly showed this before, actually, let me just first publish my sample trip to Colorado. I just want to publish it so that I can use it as an example. But the first option I have is to click on the options icon, which is just to the rightermost side of the sample template. And by clicking on that, I have the option to either delete my template or create a brand new trip from my template. So clicking on this allows me to give it a new name. So I can call this Trip to Colorado. And then I can actually choose my start date. So this is something that I just want to show briefly so that it's very clear to everybody about how a template translates into a trip. I'm just going to close this for 2 seconds. So you'll notice that for my sample trip to Colorado, it's a 7-day trip. And in that trip, I had things that fell on day 1, and I had things that fell on day 3. So what does that look like when I actually turn it into a trip? I've had this question a couple of times from people, so I'd like to demonstrate now to show you and illustrate properly what that looks like. So I'm going to create a trip from this template. I'm going to call it Trip to Colorado. And I'm going to have it start on August 1st, just so that everything falls sequentially and it looks really, it becomes really apparent to everybody. So I'm going to create trip from template. And then, so now it goes from August 1st to August 8th, 7-day trip. And things that fell on the 1st of August will be on August 1st. Sorry, that fell on day 1 of the template will be on August 1st. And then I had some things that fell on the 2nd day, some things that fell on the 4th day and stuff like that. So those all fall on the exact date that I had them start on in the template. So if you have a template that has various activities booked on various days, those will all be sorted chronologically in the correct order when you translate that into a trip. I just wanted to show you with the date, the first day of the trip being August 1st, just so that everybody could see that. Oh, 1 second. I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me still? I've had an unstable internet connection for a second. Okay, perfect. Everything looks good. Just want to make sure we're good. Okay. So the second method for creating a trip from a template is from within the template itself. So I'm going to go into sample template to Colorado. And you'll notice that in the trip banner, there's this little plus button that when I hover over it, it says create trip. Clicking on this will allow me to create a trip from my template. And then again, the same thing as when I was creating a trip from my template before, I can choose a new trip name and I can choose a start date. Now there's a couple different reasons that you might want to create a trip from your template versus from the template's dashboard. One thing off the top of my head would be if you really quickly wanted to send something to a prospective new traveler, you might go into your templates dashboard and just look through all of the different templates that you have available, and then quickly just make a brand new trip from that to send off. Versus if you were in the middle of creating your template and you finished it up and then you were like, okay, this is great, I'm going to create a brand new trip from this. So it depends if you were previously creating this template or if you had been doing something else entirely and then you just came into your templates dashboard to grab a template in order to show to a client. So it just depends where you are. And this gives you the flexibility that you don't have to be actively creating your template in order to create a brand new trip from that. So you don't always have to go into your templates every single time to create trips from them. And then finally, from your regular dashboard, so from the default tab, My Trips, you can always import a template directly into your trip. So I'm going to create a brand new trip, for example. So let's say this one's called, okay, my trusty Europe Adventure for the Smiths, and I'll have it start on the 1st of August until the 12th, create a new trip. So let's say that I had already started creating a trip that had some flight segments already here. I'm just going to create something really random off the top of my head. I don't know a Colorado airport off the top of my head, so we're just going to do that. That works. This is super inaccurate. I just needed to have some flights in here so I can illustrate my point. All right, let's see. We're going to have that be on the 12th. Oh, yeah. Et voilà. Okay, super. All right, so let's say you'd already begun your trip and you had a couple flights there, and then you realized that there was a really good template that you wanted to import into this trip to spruce it up and add activities and the like. you would access that template from the import template option from the left-hand side, and then search for your template by name, sample template 2, Colorado. See, that's an option that just popped up, so I'm going to click it, and then I get to choose when it starts. So I'm going to have it start on the 1st, and then import my template into my trip. Et voila, everything will import. I'm just going to rearrange that by dragging and dropping. And then every single thing that I had in that template will be imported into my trip. So this method would be particularly useful if you'd already begun building your trip and you had the more specific elements like your flights or some specific tours or something like that. But if you had a template that had a lot of good destination content, you could always import it just to spruce up your already fledgling trip. So those are the 3 different methods for importing a or creating a trip from a template, I should say. Of course, you could always do the reverse as well. So if you have a really successful trip that you can see yourself reusing again in the future, you can always convert that trip into a template for safekeeping. Keep in mind that the template doesn't have to 100% match the trip that you originally sent your travelers on. Maybe, for example, you just want to keep the base activities and hotels. You can always modify your template later on, so don't worry about whether your trip is the absolute perfect model for all of your future trips. Personally, when I convert my trips into templates, the first thing I do is remove all of the flight information, since that can always be added in for your particular travelers with your GDS or whatever you use once you're using the template in the future. So just like before, there's a couple different options for how to create a template from a trip, but we're going to go over all of those options again just to reiterate how to do so. So let's pick a sample trip to Dublin as my example. So just like before, where you could create a trip from a template from the templates dashboard, I'm going to create it from my regular dashboard by going to the appropriate trip, clicking on the options icon to the right of that trip, and selecting Create New Template. You'll notice you also have the option to add it to an existing template, but for right now, I'm just going to focus on this. So we're going to create a brand new template, and we're going to call it Sample Template to Dublin, and then create new template from that. So that's one way, and then all of my segments are right here. And if I really want to make sure that this works as a template, I might get rid of my flights because those are probably going to get added in later. And they'll likely not be the same because you're probably not always going to have clients from the same place. So I'm just going to get rid of those altogether. I might get rid of the company car because maybe I will do something different the next time. Other than that, everything else looks good. So I'm going to keep all of my activities in my hotels. Oh, I got rid of that one. Et voila. So that one looks good to me. Otherwise, you can also add it to an existing template. So I'm going to go back to one of my trips. Let's choose sample trip to Austria this time and add to an existing template. So we're going to look one up. So I have a sample template to Europe that I can add this to. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to choose the start date. I'll do the 12th. Import trip. And then my sample template to Europe, which already had a bunch of stuff in it, now has all of my things for my Austria trip. So everything's in there. Again, I'm just going to go back to my templates. I just want to find where that was. Sample template right there. Perfect. That was part of my company, which we're going to get into in a second also. You'll notice though that this trip is currently in this template is currently in published state. So if you're going to add a trip to a template, just make sure that your template first is already published. That way it's available in that search. One important thing to note is that any supporting documents from the original trip will not be added into the created template, as the platform assumes that these documents are sensitive to the specific travelers on the original trip. So if you need the documents to be carried over, always just remember to add them to the template. Like I mentioned before, if you have any documents in your templates, those will be retained when you create your new trips because the template is designed to be shared. So obviously it's not going to get rid of any documents you added to it because that would be a waste of time. But the reverse, like I just mentioned, isn't true. If you had a template, like let's say for instance, let's use sample trip to Western Canada. Do I have any supporting documents here? Yes, I have a bunch of content and I have my agency terms and conditions. So I'm going to create a new template from the sample trip to Western Canada. Sample template to Western Canada. Create new templates. And I'm just going to verify by going to my supporting documents. And yeah, you'll notice that there's no content from library, and there's no file attachments, even though those were there before. And like I mentioned, that's just because the platform assumes that those specific documents that I had added were private and meant for the travelers on that original trip. So they're not going to be retained just in case you forget to double check and accidentally send this template to a new traveler that has sensitive information on it. So we always want to make sure that that sensitive information isn't carried over accidentally. Of course, if you had content to your library, that's always in your library, so you can just quickly add that back. That literally takes no time at all. I'll just do Lake Louise. Boop. Western Canada. Boop. Easy peasy. Okay, so now that we've covered how to build templates, we're going to navigate back to the templates dashboard where I am right now and look at how templates can be managed within your company. So this next section mainly concerns company administrators specifically. You can always identify if you're a company administrator if you have the little company tab at the top of the trip publisher. Company administrators have the ability to see all of the templates created by users in the company and then make those templates available for everybody in their company. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining the difference between my templates, group templates, and company templates. So in my templates, these are all of the templates that you have created, both pending and published. So it's mainly concerned with my own, ergo my templates. Group templates are only available for company administrators or members of the same group. Company administrators can see every template created by every single person in their company. If a template is pending, such as this Nile experience one, company administrator can actually make edits to that template. So I can add some stuff right now. I can even edit some existing segments in this template, etc., etc. And if a template is published, such as this Roman highlights, the company administrator can set the template to be available to everybody in the company. We're going to get into that a little bit later. I just wanted to show you some of the functions that company administrators have in group templates. And finally, company templates. So everyone has access to this tab, not just company administrators. This contains published templates made available to everybody in the company. You can see that there's no category here for status because these are all published by default. They have to be or they can't be accessible here. Only the company administrator has the ability to make a template, a company template. So we're going to go over a little bit about how to do that. So I'm going to demonstrate how to make a template available in company templates from my templates. So first, let's do it from group templates. We're going to go to group templates, and we're going to select a pending template that has not been created by my administrator account. So we're going to choose my colleague Barry's trip, Nile Experience. So we're going to go into Nile Experience. So I'm just going to go briefly into this trip to show that as a company administrator, not only do I have the ability to edit someone else's template, but I also have the ability to publish somebody else's template, just like I did now. So now that it's published, I can't edit it anymore. Just like I mentioned before, it has to be pending in order to make edits, but that's fine because I wanted to publish it because I want to make this accessible to everybody in my company. So you can see here in the trip banner that there's a little lock icon. So the lock icon in the blue bar indicates that this is currently a private template. Private templates are only available for the creator to use and the company administrator to see. Now, if I click on the lock icon, it will change to a little shop icon. So it is now a company template. So I'm going to go back to my templates. I'll navigate back to group templates where I just was, and you'll see that Nile Experience is no longer part of group templates. But if I come to company templates, voila, he's just here, my little Nile template guy. So you can see that the template is now available to the company, and it won't appear in group templates anymore, and it won't appear under my templates for the creator also. All right, and now anybody in the company can come here and create a brand new trip from this template. And this allows company administrators to really curate the kinds of templates that their advisors are creating trips from. So you can really curate exactly what trips are being made into templates. Sorry, what templates are being made into trips. Okay, so I'm going to go back to dashboard. Actually, let's go back to my template dashboard. So we've gone over quite a lot today. So I just have one more final thing that I'd like to a little bit talk about before we head into questions. So just wanted everyone to know to stay tuned for some more information that we'll be communicating soon around a new proposals feature that is currently being developed. So this functionality will allow you to send templates or multiple templates at a time as trip options to your customers. Proposals will show the number of days like we've seen for templates today. And if you'd like to be one of the first people to try proposals once they are available, you can email us at support@umapped.com and we'll make sure that you're on the list for when this feature is first launched. So just wanted to let everybody know that even though we've talked a little bit today about the fact that, one second. So we talked a little bit today about the fact that you can't send templates to clients. We are currently working on something that we'll be able to send directly to clients. So stay tuned for more information. We don't have exact timeline, I don't have any information about a timeline, but it's coming soon, so just keep an eye out. Okay, so over the course of this session, we've looked at everything to do with templates, including how to create templates and the difference between creating templates versus trips, how to manage templates as a company administrator, and lastly, how to convert templates into trips and vice versa. So at this point, I'm going to move on to the live Q&A portion of this webinar. So I would like again to ask everybody to not only ask questions about what you've seen today, but anything that you have questions about in general. For anyone that can't stay for the Q&A, I just want to thank you for participating in today's webinar. As I mentioned, I will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to this recording, some follow-up instructions, and just some hot tips and things like that and more. All right, so I'm just going to take a quick sip of my coffee so I can catch my breath, and then we're going to look at my questions that I still have. So Miguel asked, we cannot create a PDF file out of a template. So at the moment, no. If you needed to create a PDF from a template, you would again have to create a brand new trip from one of these templates. I'll just give you another example right off the top of my head. I'm going to take Adventure in France. I'm going to create a new trip. This is going to be my Adventures in France trip. Start date, Mid-August, doesn't matter. So you'd have to create the trip from that template and then access the PDF. But templates don't have that functionality because, like we've talked a little bit about before, at the moment, templates are meant for internal use only. So there isn't a PDF or a web view that you can send to somebody. So let's look at more questions. Sandra asked, can you show info again on temporary use? I'm not 100% sure what you mean by temporary use. I would just like to ask a little bit more about what you mean by temporary use, and I'll come back to this question in a little. So Irene asked, in a template such as the Nile cruise, where does the summary come from when using client base? Or is this something we manually add? So anything that you've added in client base will come through. Typically, note segments, like any kind of note in client base will come through as a note segment. So this will come in like this, just a little note. This is also a note that my colleague Barry actually made himself. Actually, did he make this himself? I'm gonna unpublish it just so I can get a look at it. Yes, he did. So he made this himself. He just chose some different formats for the headings, as well as down here is just a normal format. This is just a note. You always have the ability within the trip publisher itself to add a summary, which just summarizes all the activities and hotels and flights that are occurring in either your template or your trip. This isn't something you can import from either client base or anywhere else. It's really particular to the trip publisher itself. So anything that comes in as like a series of texts or something from client base will come in as a note, and then you can always change that. You can always reorder it, change what date it falls on in the, let me find one. Yeah, you can change what date it is just by dragging and dropping and things like that. Okay, departure date, there we go. Oh, do you mean this slide, Sandra? Come back to this in a few seconds. I just see some more questions in the chat. Okay. Thanks for everybody for informing me that I couldn't, no one could hear me for a few seconds before. I hope I didn't cut out too much. Okay. Barbara asked, I usually use a printed version of the itinerary to send to clients as docs, but don't want all of the detailed destination info. So my workaround has been to copy the trip and edit out the parts I don't want. Have you guys figured out a way of suppressing printing some segments yet? So that's a good feedback. We don't actually have any ability to suppress certain segments at the moment. It's a good thing to add for the future. I'll take this down as feedback and put it in our feedback tracker for the product team. My only recommendation for the moment would be like, let's go into one of my previously created trips. So if you were going to send one of your trips off as a PDF, but you really didn't want to show certain things, but you wanted to do that without deleting them from the trip altogether, personally, my recommendation would be to come into your settings, create a duplicate of that trip. So I'm just going to call this copy, Europe Adventure with the Smiths copy. And then in this one, I'm going to remove all of the destination content. So let's say I just want to get rid of my notes segment here because I actually didn't have a lot of destination content in this trip, but I'm just going to keep my activities and flights, and I'm going to get rid of any content that was in here. And then I'll send this PDF off to my clients. That way, this is kind of a workaround for the moment, so I will take that as feedback, but my workaround would be have your original copy of your trip with all of the information that you usually have in it, and then create a duplicate of that where you just take out the particular segments that you don't want to have in the PDF or in the web view. Maybe you want the original one to have all the destination content, but this one just to have the very bare minimum. I would just say have a second copy which only has that bare minimum information. And If you do have a lot of things to get rid of, you can always use, you'll notice that at the top of all of my segments in the upper right corner, there's a little white box. This is the multi-select feature, so I can tick off multiple segments at the same time, and then I can delete all of those in one go. I can also deselect all if I've accidentally clicked too many, but it means that I don't have to go into every single segment and delete all of those segments. I can just delete them all at once. So it makes it a bit quicker if you do have to use this as a workaround for the moment, just to get rid of, 1, 2, 3 segments, and then you're good. So I don't think there's any more questions. I'm just going to leave another few seconds. So Barbara asked, is there a way to collapse the segments so you just have the titles in order to reorder? At the moment, we don't have a way to collapse any of the segments because for quite a while, actually, we had the opposite as feedback where people wanted to make sure that all of the information was visible for review. So there's not a way to collapse anything right now. I would say if you just want to know what's in the trip, you can always come to the calendar, and that will show you just a little calendar view of what's on every single day, and it will just say the title. So this way you can at least look and see what's happening on what days. One thing you can also do in the calendar that I'm not sure if everybody knows, I mention it every so often, but you can drag and drop your segments into a new order from here. So if the Grottoes Trail should actually be on the 5th instead of the 4th, I can just drag that onto the 5th, and then if I go back into my trip, you'll notice that Grottoes Trail is now on the 5th of August instead of the 4th. So that's just a quick way to reorder things if you really wanted to. I would say be very careful if you're doing this because there is a lot of margin for user error because you're dragging and dropping things without really looking. So be careful when you're doing this, keep track of what you've moved around. If you're ever not sure, you can always come to your settings and check the audit log. You can always see what was removed or modified or things like that. Okay, I'm gonna wait like 30 more seconds to see if there's any more questions. And if there are no more questions, oh, can you print out the calendar view? You can't print out the calendar view from here, but if I publish my trip and I go to the web view, you can always, I'm just gonna get into my little web view here, calendar from the top over here. So of course you can always take a screenshot and then just print that screenshot. I think that's probably the most basic thing in the world to do. Or you can sync it to your personal Google Calendar, iCal, or Outlook calendar by clicking on Add to Calendar. So I don't know about anyone else, but I religiously use my Google Calendar. So this might be something that I would do if I was going to go on a trip. I would just have it synced in my Google Calendar because I check that like 900 times a day. Otherwise, you can always take a screenshot just from your calendar view within the trip itself. I don't know about other people's computers, but for me, it's just Shift Command 4 and then drag, take a photo. That's what I do. And I think that answers that question. All right, so I'm just going to give another 30 seconds for any final questions. And if not, I'm going to end this webinar now. And like I mentioned, I'll follow up with a recording of this and all additional information that I think might be useful to some people. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at umapped.com. Oh yes, Sandra wants to know about the Umapped trial info. So just come to umapped.com. Oh, thanks, Kim. Love doing these. So just come to umapped.com, and then in the top right corner, you'll see it says sign up. You just fill out the information here. So your first name, last name, email, company, website information, blah, 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 and then request free trial. And then typically it's me that gets back to you. So I'll send you all of your information regarding how to set up your account and everything like that. And then you're good to go. So I'll just send this to you as a response to your question, Sandra. 1 second. All right, so I don't think there's any more questions, and it seems like some people are trickling out. So again, thanks everybody for joining me. I really hope you learned a lot today. If you do have any questions that occur to you later on, you can always reach out to us at support@umapped.com, and that way I'll get back to you as soon as we can. And if anyone here is new to Umapped, I'm running an intro webinar in like 10 minutes. So you can always come to umapped.com, click on webinars, and sign up for the intro webinar right here. And for anybody else, the graduation ceremony is going to be this Thursday. So I look forward to seeing you all then. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. All right. Thanks, Rita, and thanks, Steph, for saying thank you for participation. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.